Hey, folks, Erick Stakelbeck here. Welcome to the Watchman Newscast live stream. Man, it's been a very busy few days here in Dallas, Texas. The National Religious Broadcasters Convention, NRB for short. Folks, this is an amazing annual event of really top Christian media leaders and voices. We're talking TV, radio, podcasters, really an incredible gathering. And at this gathering, we've got people from all around the world converging on the NRB convention. And what do you know? Our very dear friends, Yair Pinto and Mati Shoshani of TBN Israel are here with us. They were at the NRB convention. Now they're here at our TBN studio in Dallas. Of course, you know them from the TBN Israel YouTube channel. If you like our channel, you will love TBN Israel, everything they're doing on the ground, boots on the ground from Israel. Over 1.1 million subscribers and growing. Yair and Mati are co-hosts of the channel, and they join me now. Gentlemen, welcome. Great to have you here with us on this side of the pond for our live stream audience here on the Watchman Newscast. And guys, we've got a lot to break down, but some breaking news out of a place you've been talking about a bunch, the biblical heartland of Judea and Samaria. Sad to say, we had a terror attack earlier today, guys, in Samaria, in the biblical heartland. A car ramming, 13 people injured, including a few very seriously. Yair, let's start with you. What more do we know about this attack and the attacker?
Well, what we know so far is initial information, as it's been also under investigation. But we do know that it is a Palestinian terrorist that rammed his vehicle into pedestrians, into basically civilians in Israel, and kept going. So he drove over a bunch of people and then escaped the scene and then crashed into a police vehicle. And then the policeman, exited the vehicle and terminated the terrorist. This was, the official announcement that we have so far. We do not know if he was sent off by Hamas, by the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, or by any other terrorist organization. What we do know is these tensions in Judea and Samaria are on the rise for a very, very long time. We see that Hamas is now weakened in the Gaza Strip. So what they want to do, they want to carry out attacks against Israel from Judea and Samaria. This is their method. They're not really the ceasefire agreement with Israel. Their goal is always, has been, and is until this very moment, to destroy the Jewish people and the people of Israel. And they're just ramping up their operations against us from Judea and Samaria and from other places because they're weakened in the Gaza Strip. That's the situation. And on a daily basis, the IDF is stopping terrorist attacks. And I'm talking about hundreds and thousands of terrorist attacks in only a few months that were supposed to be carried out from Judea and Samaria against Jerusalem, against Israeli communities within the heartland of Israel. And they are being prevented before the terrorists are able to execute them. That means that the intelligence in Judea and Samaria is very, very strong. And right before a terrorist is going to receive his bomb to go on a suicide mission, the IDF is there to arrest him and the handler. That's the level of the operation, and that's the way to prevent it. Prevent it before they are leaving their homes.
Yeah, you're a great breakdown. And Mati, look, you've been stationed as a member of the IDF reserves since October 7th. You've been stationed Judea, Samaria. Mati, can you talk about how this is really heating up? As Yair said, this is the biblical heartland. The world may call it the West Bank, quote unquote. Here on the live stream and on TBN Israel, we call it Judea and Samaria because guess what? That's what the Bible calls it. If it's good enough for God Almighty, it's good enough for us. Mati, talk about how this really is a front and how the Iranian regime, surprise, surprise, is trying to make inroads into Judea and Samaria.
That's a great question. First of all, it's good to be with you, Eric. Secondly, it's a really important question. The question is how does Israel deal with the challenge of Judea and Samaria? And I'll explain. Judea and Samaria is an area where Jews and Palestinians live in incredibly close proximity to each other. The Israeli army, myself, my soldiers included, we play a defense game in Judea and Samaria. The exception is some of the more offensive operations that have taken place in Jenin and specific cities in northern Samaria in recent months. But overall, we're playing defense. And Hamas is trying through again, it's usually it's young and radicalized individuals to carry out terrorist attacks, and the Iranians are trying to do the same thing. And the reason they're doing that, you asked a perfectly accurate question. The reason they're trying to do that is because they've lost their strongholds. They've lost their foothold in Hamas in Gaza. They've lost their influence with Hezbollah. They've lost a lot of their regional influence through proxies, and they're afraid to attack directly since Israel bombed several of their anti-aircraft pads within Iran itself. So they're trying to push for Judea and Samaria to heat up and escalate. And the way they're doing that is they're trying to radicalize, incentivize individuals specifically to carry out terrorist attacks. Here's where it gets tricky, and I need you to bear with me for a minute because it's a little hard to explain. The terrorists that attacked today didn't come from within Judea and Samaria. The indications we have is he lived within Israel illegally, and that's not a rare scenario. When we talk about Israel's balance between hurting the quality of life and the rights, well, they're not really civilians in Israel, but let's call it hurting the quality of life of Palestinians from Judea and Samaria as they enter and exit Israel, this is exactly the problem with those kind of things. The terrorists today, from everything we knew, was illegally living within Israel proper, in northern Israel in the Galilee, living in Israel proper after illegally entering from Samaria. And he's not alone in that. There are many, many migrant workers who do the same thing. Israel plays this very delicate balancing game with allowing people to enter Israel to work from Judea and Samaria. And then this happens. This is not a localized event. Every single terrorist attack, yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, I want to say in the last 2 years that's happened, specifically when it was in the Gush Dan metropolitan, the Tel Aviv area, every single attack that took place were people that illegally entered Israel from Judea and Samaria, oftentimes people that had previously or currently been working illegally in construction and restaurants and a bunch of different jobs. And this is where it gets tense. People say, why can't you defend? Defending and preventing these people from entering means that we lock down the cities that they exit from. So this is the tenuous relationship we live. Israel errs on the side of giving liberties and rights to the Palestinians in Judea and Samaria. And the outcome of those rights and the outcome of our flexibility with that population is that they try to kill us in our own cities. That's the problem. So we're fighting a battle you lose if you're lax in your security, and you lose if you are hard on it because the international community comes down incredibly critically on Israel. So it's a very tenuous relationship that we're trying to play here.
Yeah. Folks are the best in the business. Check them out on the TBN Israel channel. Go over there and subscribe right now. And by the way, we're talking about Israel fighting wars, guys, on 7 fronts, quite literally. Judea and Samaria is one of them. And it makes me think of our good friends and our partner for today's live stream, Magen David Adom. Now, Mati and Yair know this organization very well. They're on the ground in Israel, of course. Magen David Adom is Israel's emergency services system. And guess what, folks? As I'm reading the articles about the car ramming today, Magen David Adom named in the pieces. Look, they were first on the ground once again. They are Israel's first responders. It's SaveLivesIsrael.com. And I'm often asked, look, I want to help. Since October 7th, the average American, or I'm in America, of course, we have viewers from all around the world, anyone, believers around the world. What can I do to help and bless Israel in Israel's time of greatest need? Well, guess what? Magen David Adom is the perfect way to do it. Again, these are Israel's first responders. This is Israel's emergency services system. They respond to every single terror attack, including today's car ramming, even heart attacks, car accidents, when rockets and bombs are falling and missiles from Gaza, from Lebanon into Israel. Magen David Adom, they're the first ones there on the ground, folks, helping and blessing the people of Israel. They're a largely volunteer force. 90% volunteers leaving their families to defend their fellow countrymen and women, to bless their fellow countrymen and women. Not only that, Magen David Adom controls Israel's blood supply for civilians, and very crucial here, for the IDF, for the Israel Defense Forces. It's SaveLivesIsrael.com. And quite frankly, they need your help right now, folks. This is, again, Israel's time of greatest need. Magen David Adom has seen over 30 of its volunteers killed in the line of action since October 7th, some 17 ambulances destroyed. This is war. It's 7 fronts. Magen David Adom is quite literally on the front lines. You want to help and bless Israel? It's SaveLivesIsrael.com. Right now, Magen David Adom needs more ambulances, more bandages, more medical supplies, and much more. They're stretched thin. Needless to say, after 16 months of war, SaveLivesIsrael.com. fulfilled that biblical mandate laid out in Genesis 12:3 to bless the people of Israel. SaveLivesIsrael.com, our good friends at McGinn, David Adom, and two more good friends with us right now, Mati Shoshani and Yair Pinto. Guys, shifting gears just a little bit. An issue that I think in the mainstream media here in America, of course, has flown under the radar screen in recent weeks is, I think, what can only be described as a military buildup by Egypt, really at Israel's doorstep. And you guys have covered this extensively in recent days on TBN Israel. Yair, I'll start with you. Can you give us a sense right now of the tensions between Egypt and Israel? And just a little backstory here. Look, the peace treaty between Israel and Egypt, of course, over almost 50 years old at this point. And Egypt, the most populous Arab nation, for Egypt and Israel to have tensions, that's a big deal with larger ramifications.
Yeah, Eric, definitely. Let me just share a little bit of a history. Israel had multiple wars against Egypt. Okay, Egypt and Israel have been in war many, many times in the past. And we reached a ceasefire, a peace treaty with Egypt after defeating them and taking over the Sinai Peninsula, which is a big chunk of land basically between Israel, Gaza, and Egypt. And one of the aspects of this deal, is that this area of land between Israel and Egypt will be demilitarized. And the Egyptians are not allowed to place tanks, heavy infantry units. There's really a certain amount of number of soldiers that are allowed, according to the peace treaty agreement, to be placed in the ceasefire demilitarized area that is the Sinai Peninsula. So basically, at the moment, more troops, more tanks are entering closer and closer to Israel, and it raises the tensions. Are the Egyptians planning to carry out an attack against Israel? Are they building up their forces like they did before to launch an attack? And I'm talking about tanks, helicopters, divisions of infantry units that are not supposed to be there. Okay, let me give a little bit of a background to that as well, because it's not the first time that they are ramping up military operations within the Sinai Peninsula. They've did it before when the Islamic State had a very, very strong terrorist presence in the Sinai Peninsula, and Israel allowed them to carry in military forces, special counter unit operations forces into the Sinai Peninsula, but that was with Israel's blessing in order to combat the terrorist elements of the Islamic State. Okay, now it's a totally different ballgame. Okay, they don't need tanks to counter terrorism, but they still carry out drills and additional military forces in Sinai. This is a big deal. Israel is aware. We are talking with the Americans, with the Egyptians, to understand what's going on there and to be prepared that the ceasefire will keep on going. My personal opinion about this, I think that Egypt is, moving its pieces in this huge chess game of the Middle East, because you have to project strength in order to be relevant in the Middle East. So I think that they are projecting strength to position themselves also in front of their own people, the people of Egypt, as a strong player in this region after Syria collapsed, Hezbollah collapsed, Hamas collapsed. So they want to project stability, strength also towards the Middle Eastern partners, but mainly towards the Egyptian people within the country of Egypt. So I really hope that, it doesn't mean that we will go into a war, but, if the tanks are there, the soldiers are there, it only needs to be given the order to carry out an attack. So we, Israel, need to be ready.
Yeah, a great breakdown, Yair and Mati. This is alarming, I would say. And I think Yair makes a great point. The strong horse is respected in the Middle East. But look, Egypt launching attacks against Israel, of course. They were planning to in 1967. Israel struck first, of course. Then 1973, the Yom Kippur War, they did strike. But we've had peace between Israel and Egypt for over 50 years now, Mati. Do you think this is maybe some posturing by Egypt, or is there a larger long-term trend that we should be concerned about here?
I think Egypt has two main goals. It's quite simple if you analyze them. They're a logical government. They're looking for two specific things. One is external, the other one is internal. On the external side, what are they looking for? They want, and Yael framed this precisely, they want to reposition themselves in the Middle East. The Egyptians, since forever, since they were established as a country, they position themselves as the mother of the Arab nations. Western audiences sometimes fail to remember that the only mega country in the Middle East that is actually Arab is Egypt. The Iranians aren't, they're not Arab. The Iranians are Iranian. The Turks are not Arab. They're Turkish. They share a religion. They don't share an ethnicity, and they don't share the desire to be the superpower in the Arab world. They share a power to be the leaders in the Muslim world, but Egypt has a specific goal externally of being the superpower of the Sunni Arab world. That's what their external intention is. By the way, let's not forget where Egypt sits. Israel isn't their only neighbor. South of Egypt, you have Sudan. Sudan's been at a violent civil war. And if you look farther within the continent of Africa, both east and south, they have a lot of problems of their own. Not only that, Egypt itself, when it's projecting power, is looking not just to Israel and its land neighbors, it's looking also to its maritime neighbors. And in the sea, they have the Houthis, who are propped up by the Iranians, who have been decimating the Egyptian economy by blocking trade through the Suez Canal. So when they expand their navy, they've been doing this for years, they want to maintain safe passage for ships within the Red Sea and then through the Suez Canal. That's one. Two, internally, who are they talking to? Egypt is a country of about 100 million people. They have an incredibly young population with incredibly high growth rates. Their economy has been on the decline for over a decade at this point. They're a martial law that is controlled by a military regime that holds on to power by controlling the moving pieces of the economy. They have problems with money. They have problems with cash flow. They've lost their tourism and the Suez Canal income to a great degree, and their population is very, very unstable and volatile. Not only that, they deal internally with Muslim terrorism. Remember, the Arab Spring was the Muslim Brotherhood, which is a radical terrorist organization, taking over what was a secular Arab government. That was the Arab Spring for the Egyptians. So they're looking at the internal unrest. They're looking at the financial pressures. They're looking at their growth rates, and they're saying, we want to make sure that our population can't rise up against the government. That's internally. And externally, how do we position ourselves to be the recognized superpower of the Arab Muslim world in this region? Two, how do we prevent our external enemies from trying to hurt our economy, our trade, and our stature in this world? Their big enemies when it comes to stature are our biggest friends, the Saudis, who are sort of vying with them for power, and the Iranians, who are the disruptive force of the Middle East. Those are their big enemies, and they're fighting for the position of the mother of the Arab world, which is how they call themselves.
Mati, that is a great breakdown. And it's interesting, guys, because I feel like, and Mati, you mentioned two of the players. When we think of the power players in the Middle East, of course, Israel, the superpower in the region, but I think of the Iranian regime and the Saudis and the Turks as well, kind of vying to be the leader in the Muslim world. We often forget about Egypt, it seems like, since the Arab Spring. And look, again, it's the most populous Arab nation. They are a massive, massive power player in the region, no doubt. And speaking of which, Egypt also has a role to play, perhaps, in Gaza. And what is the state of that, guys? We talked about it earlier, by the way, folks. If you like what you're hearing here, number one, you can subscribe to both of our YouTube channels. Erick Stakelbeck on TBN right here. Subscribe when we're done. And then the TBN Israel YouTube channel, Mati and Yair have over 1.1 million subscribers. And that's for a very good reason, because they do an incredible job, as you're hearing right now. Also, my nightly show, Stakelbeck Tonight, on TBN every weeknight, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, with a re-air at 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And Mati and Yair, you can also catch them on TBN on the broadcast side. It's called Boots on the Ground from Israel, every Thursday night on TBN, 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Folks, I think I got those times right, but all the great content you want in Israel, you've got it here on YouTube, and you got it here on the TBN, on the TV end. And guess what? You've got all the bells and whistles that you want on the TV side. But we were talking earlier on the TV show, guys, which we recorded earlier. Gaza and the latest on the ceasefire. Okay, phase one, so-called, coming to an end, it seems. Are we going to even get to phase two? Mati, we were talking earlier. I know you're skeptical about phase two even happening. What do you think?
I don't think there's going to be a phase two. To remind everyone, phase one was supposed to be this multiple week process where Israel's releasing Hamas terrorists and they're releasing hostages who were illegally captured by Hamas from within Israel, civilian and military alike. And that was supposed to be one part of it where some of the hostages were released. That ends this weekend, is the last week of that process. During that process I want to say it was on the 6th week, the agreement calls for Israel and Hamas terrorists to reach a longer term decision or agreement in which Hamas and Israel sort of understand what the next day is going to look like. The US is involved in it, the Saudis are involved in it, the Qataris are involved in it. There are a lot of moving pieces. We're not there. We never started the negotiation in time. Both Israel and Hamas claimed that the other side was violating the agreement. The truth is that Hamas, on every single turn of this agreement, used many cynical tactics to extend and torture almost the people that were held in their hands and the Israeli public. And they violated the agreement on every single turn, to the point where the Israeli public and government have very little trust in them as a long-term solution. Also, here's the big problem. Our long-term goal with this as Israel is not to have Hamas in controlling the Gaza Strip at the end of the day. Our goal is not having an agreement with Hamas. It's removing Hamas as the governing body of the Gaza Strip. Sadly, I don't think that's going to happen in the foreseeable future. I think there's going to be a lot of external pressure to try and reduce their power and their influence in the Gaza Strip. But removing them altogether seems to me, at least at this time, like something that isn't going to happen in the foreseeable months. There will be an agreement, there will be a change, but not altogether.
That must happen. They must eventually, Mati, be removed. I mean, sooner rather than later would be preferable. And we've talked a bunch here on the channel, I know you guys have as well, about the Trump effect, really throughout the Middle East and on Gaza. And Yair, look, you served in Gaza not too long ago as a member of the IDF reserves. I've described Gaza as one giant booby trap stretching about 25 miles. Can you talk about the impact that these parades, I guess you call them, demonic, evil celebrations that Hamas has held over the past few weeks with the hostage handovers, and really reaching the depths of pure evil last week, guys, with the Bibas family handover, unspeakable evil, the very babies that these Hamas demons strangled to death with their bare hands. They parade them in celebration, parade their remains. It's just too horrible to even wrap our heads around. But nonetheless, Yair, in your view, I mean, living in Israel, having served in Gaza, have these handovers, in a sense, with the spectacle, the grotesque spectacle that Hamas has made of all this, have they signed their own death warrant here? Have they dug themselves an even deeper hole? Because I can tell you, being here in the U.S., the Trump administration is reportedly furious about what it's seen, and it's definitely just adding to the resolve of America to crush Hamas. Do you see that same resolve increasing in Israel as well?
Yes, definitely. In Israel, let me explain the situation. The whole country of Israel is living on a week-to-week basis since this phase A of the deal began. So the whole conversation, all the emotions go to every Saturday when more hostages are going to be released. Me, my wife, my family, my friends, everybody are glued to the TV looking and waiting for the release of the hostages. Are they going to release them alive? Are they going to be walking? Are they going to be looking like Holocaust survivors? Are they going to release the Bibas family alive or not? The remains. Is it really the remains? Is it not? And every step of the way, Hamas is using our love, the people of Israel that we love and know these hostages personally. I mean, and they use that in order to play mind games. And their goals are these. They want to project strength internally in towards of the Palestinian people. They want to project strength that millions of people lost their houses in the Gaza Strip, but not for no reason. Okay, they want to show an image of victory internally. They want to spread fear inside the Palestinian people, so that nobody will stand up and say, we want a better leadership. Okay, that's one of the goals. Second goals is towards the international community. And we're saying that in Israel and in the United States, people are shocked and angered and terrified. But within the international community, within the social media networks, I see something else. That Hamas forced an Israeli hostage that was released after 15 months in a tunnel to kiss the foreheads of two Hamas terrorists that kept him captive. And you know what I've been seeing in many, comments on social media? I've been seeing, look, they did not treat them bad at all. The Israeli hostages are even kissing the Hamas terrorists. Look how well they treated them in captivity, inside the Gaza Strip, in a terror tunnel, no sunlight, no food, most of the time being tied up, with shackles. And that's the response. So what I understand is that, some people, if they hate Israel and stand with evil and with Hamas, they will swallow whatever Hamas is
Yeah.
feeding them. And that's the sad part. So I'm really happy that the United States administration at least is seeing the atrocities that Hamas is trying to do. But in terms of the international propaganda against Israel, it just doesn't matter what they're doing. People are on their side because there is this evil spirit of deception and lies, and it's like taking over many people around the world. And I
True.
think it's important to share about that because it's sad. And these spectacles are working. For us, it looks like, weird, but for them, they're gaining support even by these spectacles.
Yeah.
And I know I can't understand it. I don't understand why it's happening. It doesn't make any sense to me. It's not moral, but somehow it's what's happening. And it's in a spirit evil. We just need to pray for it, I guess.
Yes, I think you hit on it, Yair. There's no other way to explain it other than this is a spiritual battle. And clearly, these are demonic forces. And I think even people who aren't believers are starting to see, wait a minute, the level of evil we're seeing in Gaza runs deeper. This is a deep spiritual, demonic, satanic evil and hatred of Israel and the Jewish people. And Yair, as you said, many around the world have been infected by this even more since October 7th. You would think there'd be more sympathy for Israel after October 7th when they were brutally attacked without provocation. Instead, in many quarters, it's been the opposite. And even some so-called Christians have engaged in this madness and this replacement theology, which says that God's done with the Jewish people. But thank God we have you guys doing what you're doing. We'll continue to do what we're doing. I don't want to let you go without asking you just one more question, guys, for each of you. I talked a bunch here about this being the year of reckoning, I believe, for Iran's nuclear weapons program. In the very least, I think now with Donald Trump back in office, with Iran's air defenses destroyed, its ring of fire smashed, in the very least, it seems that by the end of this year, we'll have a pretty good idea of what happens next. Either Iran's going to, God forbid, successfully test a bomb and follow the North Korea model, or Israel, very likely with help from the United States, destroys Iran's nuclear facilities. But it seems, guys, that it's all coming to a head. You've got the Israeli on the ground perspective. How do you guys see it? Mati, I'll start with you. Then Yair, I'd like to get your thoughts as well.
Well, if I was a betting man, which I'm not, thankfully, here's my estimation. By the end of this year, we're going to see several big treaties come into play. The U.S., and we mentioned this earlier today in a different conversation, the U.S. administration came to this term planning to make history as a government. Trump and his team set themselves up for success in reshaping the way the world operates and repositioning the U.S. in a better position to bring good into the world, to regain the power that it deserves, by the way, in king making and economy making around the world, and at the same time set up the next steps to help other countries come to the table. What do I expect to see before this year is out? On the Middle East, close to home to us, we're going to see a forced agreement. I don't think it's going to be mutual. I think Hamas will be forced into an agreement where external powers tell them what will be. It's going to be the U.S., it's going to be the Saudis, it's going to be the Egyptians, the Qataris to a certain degree, maybe, and Israel, of course, bartered by the U.S. saying this is what the future of the Gaza Strip is looking like for the foreseeable future. It's going to be humanitarian aid. It's going to be military involvement, probably with outside contractors, military contractors that are going to be within the Gaza Strip to keep the peace. It's going to be new organizations that are not the UN distributing humanitarian aid. That's a big thing. And it's going to be a outsidely or externally enforced ceasefire agreement between Israel and the Hamas. That's one. Then it's going to extend into a larger regional agreement. We're going to have Hezbollah through Lebanon. The Lebanese government is going to sign an agreement with Israel. Syria, I don't think is going to sign anything. They'll just continue sort of the business as usual. And I think there's going to be what we would call, let's call it Chapter 3 of the Abraham Accords, which is going to be Saudi. I'm not sure fully officially, but probably quasi-official Abraham Accords with them, with Israel, with the US, and an incentive package to keep all the other US buddies in the Middle East at the table. So that's Jordan and Egypt. World Bank loans, incentive programs, guarantees of trade of technology and other goods. So basically giving a win-win to all those other countries that are involved. Then when we zoom out of that, I think Ukraine, Russia is going to come to some kind of conclusion with the help of Donald Trump. I think that's happening faster than we expect by what he's been signaling. And then the sort of the ripple effect of that is a reshaping of the NATO treaties and the US trade and relationships with its other immediate neighbors, namely Canada, Mexico, and other Central America countries. Just to say this as far as negotiation goes, it's really interesting to me as a Middle Easterner, looking at what the US did. They didn't just start out by saying, Hamas beware, we're planning to do 1, 2, 3, 4 with you. They first sent their emissaries into Latin America, Central America, and forced them in an incredible speed to completely reshape their immigration policies, as in people that are illegally leaving their countries towards the US or into the US. And Hamas took note of that, and Iran took note of that, and the Egyptians and the Jordanians took note of that, and they said, if they're able to do that with these countries that have an army and have an economy and have clout in the international arena, then we are small change for them in this game, and we might as well play along. So I know this sounds like a lot. Trump in his previous term, without having this mastermind plan in place, was able to do things that take multiple lifetimes in diplomacy and international relations. And that is not an exaggeration. That is an understatement in what they did. Now that he has, again, incredible men of God that we know in positions of influence, be it Huckabee and many others that we know inside the administration, I think it's going to be nothing short of a historical term for the U.S. government and a reshaping of the power balance for the Middle East. If the U.S. in the past was able to bring Israel and the Egyptians and Israel and the Jordanians and Israel and the Palestinians to long-lasting, Palestinians less, let's call it Egypt and Jordan to long-lasting peace agreements, this can be considerably greater in the effect of it. Yeah. So a lot's happening.
Mati, amazing breakdown for sure. And hey, what a difference strong leadership makes, and a strong leader who has leverage and is willing to use it. Yes. Yair, last question, then I will let you guys go. You guys are jet lagged. You've been on your feet at the NRB convention. We've had a great time, though. This has been a blast having you here. Yair, last question, simple question. Look, I mean, it seems, Mati mentioned there's men of God surrounding Donald Trump. It seems that, man, we're in the middle of a move of God here. I mean, things are happening in America, in Israel, around the world, and it seems like the God of Israel, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob is moving. Mm-hmm. How do you see it from Jerusalem?
Well, what I've seen in Jerusalem is that up until this war started, up until October 7th, there was this like weird state that the world was in, that you can be living in a gray area, in the middle, not hot, not cold. You could, read the Bible, but not necessarily stand with Israel. You can be a Christian, but not have a direct opinion on this matter or the other matter. I think that what we understood, and this is just amazing to see how God uses Israel in order to share his love and to basically share the truth to the world and impact the entire world in every situation. So the world was in this state that you do not know what's good and what's bad. And after October 7th, it's just so clear to everybody. You have to make a decision. Are you on the side of the good guys? Are you on the side of God? Or are you on the side of Satan, the bad guys, the enemy? There's no middle ground anymore. That's it. It all changed. And we see that also with the new leadership that are rising up You see that with Donald Trump stating, Hamas is evil. Hamas should not rule and stay in control of the Gaza Strip. Hostages must be released. It's like yes or no. Let your yes be yes, and yet let your no be no. People need to make a decision. We are not in a state of being a limbo anymore. And I think this is what we learned in a spiritual level from this, atrocities. It was hard. It is hard. It was a terrible change and shook up to the entire world. But, after terrible times, we see unimaginable revivals. Okay, there is a revival now in Iran. In Iran, out of all places, the people of Iran are turning to God, to the God of Abraham, of Isaac, and of Jacob. And that's amazing for me to see. On my shows, Erick, people are reporting, I am from Iran. I love Israel. I love the Jewish people. Don't listen to our government. Iranians love you, and we hate the Islamic Republic of Iran, like the government that is ruling Iran. So I believe there is hope, like on a spiritual level. I believe that we're going to see a huge revival all across the Middle East, especially now after all these, hard year and a half. When God is making a miracle, he makes sure that it's against all odds and that, men wouldn't be able to do it on their own. So that's what I'm hoping for the Middle East. And in Israel, we've been after a very, very hard year financially, militarily, but as a country, as a people, we are a lot stronger than what we were before. So I believe that the economy of Israel will skyrocket in the coming, 5 years. I believe that the nation, as the unity goes, and our approach towards this region and to the world will be a lot better than what we were in our position going forward, and connecting to Mati's projection of these Abraham Accords 2.0 with economic cooperation with our neighbors. The sky is the limit. I'm super optimistic, and I believe that after this very, very hard time, we're going to see some amazing breakthrough on a spiritual level, on an economic level, and on a nationwide level in terms of Israel in the future. So, keep praying for the peace of Jerusalem. The best thing that we can always do, and put your bet on God's side, not against God. Yes. That's my advice for the non-betting man, Mati Shoshani.
Amen. Yair, great stuff, my friend, and so true. And guys, we realize that the three of us, but man, I hope the average follower of Jesus, follower of Yeshua, the average Christian out there really realizes the moment we are living in right now. God is moving. We're at the doorstep of some amazing things of biblical proportions, prophetic times, no doubt. That's why we're so glad we have our good friends Mati Shoshani and Yair Pinto on the ground in Israel, boots on the ground, quite literally. Folks, it was great having them with us today. What a blast. And be sure to subscribe to the TBN Israel channel. Remember, check them out. Guys, God bless. We appreciate you so much. We're praying for you and everyone in Israel. We will see you again soon. For Mati, for Yair, for the entire team here. God bless you. And remember, never hold your peace. Hey everyone, thanks for checking out the Watchman Newscast. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you never miss an upload, and tap the bell icon so you're notified every time a new video is posted. And don't forget to share your thoughts, insights, and comments below. Thanks for watching. We'll see you back here tomorrow.